Approximately 1 in 10 Australian adults smoke cigarettes every day. Smoking used to be a common habit for many more Australians, and over the last 50 years we have seen a massive shift from smoking being widely accepted to today, where Australian smokers are subject to higher taxes, more public exclusion and greater medical scrutiny than ever before. One of the restrictions which Australian smokers experience are public smoke-free areas. Melbourne City Councillor Richard Foster is a driving force behind the city's push to introduce smoke-free areas and is planning to introduce more in the CBD in the near future. A decision on the largest smoke-free area in Melbourne is set to be decided by the council in December this year.
Well, people do have a right to smoke outdoors. They do have a right to smoke. But I guess what we hear from the consultations and what my view certainly is that they don't have a right to impact the health of others. And once again, you know, when we look at those raw numbers, because they're pretty compelling, when we look at the raw numbers, 88% of the population that is now smoke-free, that chooses not to smoke, it's actually protecting their rights. It's actually protecting their rights to health.
Although Melbourne City Council is happy with this proposal, Director of Quit Victoria Dr Sarah White is not convinced that banning smoking along city streets is the right answer.
If we had smoke-free streets across the CBD, there is a risk that smokers would feel more ostracised, but I also just don't think it's very workable, because if you are working in an office or a cafe or some place of business in the city and you need to go and have a cigarette because it is an addiction, you would have to walk many blocks until you could find somewhere to have that cigarette. And then what we would have is lots of people clustering in one place to have a cigarette and then having to make their way back to work.
According to data from the National Drug Strategy Household Survey released in 2014, daily smokers declined from 17.5% in 2007, 15.9% in 2010, and to 13.3% in 2013. Specifically, the smoking rate amongst Victorians dropped to 12.6%. Despite being the largest preventable cause of death in Australia, a pro-smoking lobby provided this statement, arguing smoking in Melbourne is not an issue of concern.
There's no evidence smoking in public will have any adverse effects on health, certainly no worse effects than consuming car fumes when waiting for a bus on a busy street corner. People are being forced to source tobacco from the black market. This turns normal people into criminals. Is the government acting a little like a drug pusher, making a highly addictive product available, then charging prices that go well beyond the cost of production to people who are addicted to it? Many doctors don't consider smoking to be the biggest health issue confronting Australians. However, you'll be lucky to find any of them saying that on the record.
I think there's serious questions about what pro-smoking lobby groups actually understand about their client base being smokers. All our community engagement tells us is that upwards of 60% in some areas and upwards of 70% in other areas of smokers that have been asked whether they want smoke-free areas have all said yes. So I'd suggest that the pro-smoking lobby, if you like, needs to go back to their client base, needs to go back to the group that they claim to represent and start getting to know them a little bit better, because what we're hearing from them is that they actually want more smoke-free spaces.
Well, I think it's excessive. The reason is because I don't think the smoking ban is seriously about the dangers of second-hand smoke. There's no evidence that second-hand smoke in open public places causes any more harm than the exhaust from the cars and trucks that use the roads of Melbourne. So this is not about protecting people from second-hand smoke. It's about telling people how to live their lives. And I think that's where it crosses the line. And quite frankly, if you look at politicians' lives, the average politician, you'll generally find the average politician has a greater incidence of marriage breakups, alcohol abuse. So I don't think politicians are the best people to be telling us how to live our lives, but they continue to do so like they're on some sort of pedestal.
Here's what the people on Melbourne's bustling Swanston Street had to say about the issue.
So I recommend there should be more non-smoking areas. You know, not everyone smokes, and you can also have passive smoke, which is almost just as bad.
I don't like making rules just for the sake of it, just to basically appease all these minority groups.
I think to come straight out of the buildings and be like instantly confronted by it, it's not really what you want.
I think there should be a blanket ban right throughout the city on fun, smoking, alcohol, as much as possible.
We do have choices. Offended by the smoke, move elsewhere. No big deal.
And a recent tax hike is another blow to Australian smokers. Under new legislation, smokers face a 12.5% increase on tobacco excise tax each year from now until 2020. But does the tax increase really work towards making Australia a healthier smoke-free country? Or is this just revenue raising from Canberra?